The school hallways buzzed with the laughter of children, the shuffle of sneakers, and the faint smell of crayons and cafeteria food. But in the principal's office, something darker was unfolding. A young girl sat in the chair, tears streaking her cheeks, while the principal loomed over her with a cruel smirk. Without permission, without cause, he snatched the clippers and shaved her hair, her long, beautiful hair down to the scalp. He thought it was funny. He thought no one would fight back. But what he didn't know was who her father was and the storm that was about to arrive. Her name was Ava Johnson, a bright, energetic 10-year-old girl with a love for art, theater, and sports. She was also the daughter of one of the most recognized men in the world, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. To most kids, though, she wasn't The Rock's daughter. She was just Ava, the girl who always carried her sketchbook, who stood up for others when they were teased, and who dreamed of one day becoming an actress like her father. The school she attended was in a suburban district, praised for its academics, but quietly criticized for something else, an undercurrent of racism that often went unspoken, unnoticed by those who didn't experience it. Ava, being biracial, had already endured her fair share of subtle comments and stares, but her bright spirit and supportive family always reminded her to stay proud of who she was. The principal of the school, Mr. Carter, had a reputation for being strict, overly strict, some said. But hidden behind his polished appearance was a bitterness that revealed itself only to those he thought too powerless to fight back. On the day of the incident, Ava was called to his office under the pretense of a dress code violation. What followed was a violation far deeper, an act meant not to enforce rules, but to humiliate, to strip away dignity. By the time Ava walked out of that office, her head bare, her classmates staring in shock, the damage was done. But the story wasn't over. In fact, it was only beginning. News of what happened didn't stay contained within the school walls. At first, it was whispers, students telling their parents, who shared it with neighbors, who posted on social media. By evening, a photo of Ava sitting in class with her head shaved and eyes red from crying went viral. People were outraged, demanding answers. But behind the online fury was a family in real pain. When Dwayne Johnson received the call, he was in the middle of a film shoot across the country. The voice on the other end of the line described what happened, but the words barely made sense. Shaved? Without permission? For fun? His heart sank. He wasn't just the Rock in that moment. He was a father, and the image of his daughter crying in humiliation shattered him. He immediately boarded a flight home. Meanwhile, at the school, Mr. Carter dismissed the backlash. He laughed when reporters called for comment. He told teachers that kids needed discipline and that parents were overreacting. But the truth was darker. He had chosen Ava because of who she was. To him, she represented a mix of cultures he looked down on, a reminder of the very diversity he resented. Shaving her hair was his way of sending a message of power, of control. But Ava was not broken. At home, surrounded by her family, she refused to hide. Though shaken and embarrassed, she held her head high, saying she didn't want to let a racist act define her worth. Her resilience fueled the anger of thousands of supporters online who rallied behind her, demanding accountability. Protests formed outside the school, with parents and activists holding signs calling for Carter's removal. The media swarmed, and suddenly this small suburban school became the center of a nationwide conversation about racism, abuse of authority, and the safety of children in schools. And still, the most powerful voice had yet to be heard, the voice of her father. When the Rock arrived at the school, the world was watching. News cameras captured his SUV pulling into the parking lot, reporters jostling to get a glimpse. But this wasn't about Hollywood, fame, or celebrity. It was about justice. He walked through the school doors, towering, unshakable, his face carved with anger, but his eyes carrying the weight of a broken-hearted father. Teachers fell silent. Students watched from classroom windows. And at the end of the hallway stood Carter, arms crossed, pretending to be unfazed. The Rock didn't shout. He didn't need to. His presence alone spoke volumes. He demanded answers, not in the booming voice of a wrestler or actor, but in the steady, controlled tone of a man who would not be ignored. He laid bare the truth. Carter had humiliated and traumatized a child, his child, under the guise of authority. He challenged the school board to take action, to show the world that such cruelty would not be tolerated. Carter's arrogance cracked under the pressure. For the first time, his smirk faltered. Parents stormed in behind the Rock, their voices echoing through the halls. Protesters outside grew louder, chanting Ava's name, demanding justice. The walls of power that Carter had hidden behind began to crumble. The climax was not just the Rock confronting one man. It was a community, a nation standing up against racism and abuse, refusing to let silence be complicity. In the weeks that followed, the school district had no choice but to act. Carter was placed on leave, then fired after an investigation confirmed his actions. But the story went beyond one man's downfall. It sparked a wave of conversations across the country about the treatment of children of color in schools, about the hidden racism in educational systems, about how authority can be abused when no one is watching. Ava became a symbol of resilience. She used her platform to encourage other kids never to be ashamed of who they are, even when someone tries to strip them of dignity. Her father stood by her side not just as a celebrity, but as a dad, reminding the world that no child should ever have to endure such cruelty. The Rock later posted a statement that resonated with millions. Our children are not objects of ridicule. They are not pawns for someone's hatred. They are the future, and we will protect them with everything we have. The story ended not with vengeance, but with awareness and change. Parents across the country pushed schools to review their policies to ensure that no principal, no teacher, no authority figure could ever abuse their power in such a way again. But perhaps the most powerful lesson came from Ava herself. When asked how she felt after everything, she simply said, "They took my hair, but they didn't take me." And that left a question for everyone watching, everyone listening. How many other children suffer in silence because no one is there to speak for them? And what will we do to make sure they're never silenced again?